January 2026. A brand new year. And already an extremely embarrassing one. It won't get any better from here, folks. As is typical of this pathetic, cursed decade. Let us talk about the latest fiasco that happened at DBolical. This time, there were two total fiascos, one on ModDB and the other on IndieDB. I already talked about the ModDB one. You can check out that video in the description. In this video, I will be talking about the IndieDB side. Unlike that cesspool laughingstock that is the ModDB, and even the modding world in general, I don't have nearly as much ire or even any hatred at all with IndieDB. Instead, I am simply disappointed and personally fed up with DBolical staff themselves playing favorites for AAA titles. While I was not as very observant of mod imposters pervading the ModDB site as I have tried to be, I was at least very vigilant against any indie imposters pervading the IndieDB site. Those of you who have watched my previous and controversial video about this matter will know what I mean regarding ModDB's irresponsible nature of granting slides and passes for indie game slop masquerading as mods on the site, be it deliberately or unwittingly. Since then, a very similar thing has since been happening to IndieDB as well, except in this case, both DBolical staff themselves and a few yet thankfully rare dirty game devs have together been sliding in AAA titles and disguising them as indie or AA games. To think that at least IndieDB would be clean of this kind of illiterate and irrational nonsense. Boy, was I so wrong. In 2021, Kerbal Space Program 2 cheated in the Indie of the Year Editor's Choice, most anticipated. In 2023, in the Editor's Choice, Starship Troopers, Extermination 1, Best Multiplayer, Dave the Diver 1, Most Creative, and S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 1, Most Anticipated. For Player's Choice, Dotage placed 8th, Streets of Rogue 2 placed 6th, and S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 was the winner. In 2024, Killing Floor 3 cheated in Most Anticipated in the Editor's Choice. Sins of a Solar Empire 2 cheated 10th place in the Player's Choice. Finally, in 2025, TimeSplitters Rewind won the Community Award in the Editor's Choice and placed 3rd in the upcoming Player's Choice. Clair Obscura, Expedition 33 placed 4th in the Release Player's Choice. So from here, I will first state that not all of these projects in question are necessarily invalid. Rather, some of them are just questionable. Even when regarding any invalid ones, at least some of them are properly categorized. It's just a matter of DBolical playing favorites. I will elaborate on each of these projects I have investigated to determine whether they are truly invalid to be featured on the annual Indie of the Year Awards, regarded as indies, or if not, what makes them questionable anomalies in the first place. I will also cover some games that are not on the top 10 but are somehow still categorized or treated as indies by either DBolical staff, the indie devs themselves just being dirty, or even a mixture of both. Here is also the usual price range for the classification of video games. Any game that is at least either indie or AA is fair game, any that is AAA is an obvious imposter. However, there are caveats. Let us first start with the questionable games. Unlike the rest of the games in this video, most of these ones are not directly guilty of unethical matters. Instead, their problems are just anomalies that are arguably a fault on DBolical's part, and I want to address these to clear some easy confusions in case anyone searching for evidence on their own time gets overly spooked into suspecting a game is an imposter just by the book and its cover without further investigation. I will start with Chernobyl Light by the Farm 51. When visiting this game's page, you may discover weird price stats. The game costs $29.99, which rounds to $30 approximate at best and $54.99 or $55 approximate at worst. Already, there appears to be a red flag here. As I investigate the maximum price tag, my search leads to the special edition of the game, known as the Premium Edition, which features extra DLC packs, soundtrack, and art book. Now I do not think it is fair to consider this game an indie imposter because of this. These are not the minimum requirement to purchase the game, they are just optional extra content if you wish to support them. The standard edition is approximately $30, a AA price tag. So this game is fair game far as IoTY standards go. Starship Troopers: Extermination by Offworld Industries. Only one price is visible on the IndieDB page, the Steam price tag at $30 approximate. Greenman Gaming features the same thing, however the Gamer's Gate price is hiked at $50 approximate, a AAA price tag. What gives? It seems that either Offworld Industries forgot to properly update their price tags consistently, or they are pulling a dirty dev tactic on Gamersgate. While I'd suspect the former, given what I later discovered on another of their games, I am now wagering the latter. Far as I am concerned, ST is the most easiest example of questionable game on this list, in a bad way. At best, this is a clumsy mistake. At worst, this game is a AAA title impersonating an indie game. The rest of these games are simply victims of a weird product glitch that tends to also misassociate with different games. Dotage features a price tag of around $18 at min to around $90 at max. By clicking on that $89.99 price URL, it leads to some shovelware slop game simply called Age. This is obviously not Dotage. I doubt the devs did this intentionally. I discovered a glitch in the IndieDB system when I was hosting my games here in the past. For some reason, DBolical refuses to fix this. Same applies to Beta Decay. The price claims to be a $50 approximate. Clicking on that price tag leads to a page whence the game is not even released yet. What I could find was a Steam page whence the game is still pending release. Similar fate also happens with Streets of Rogue 2, whence its price tag is at approximately $100. The GMG page lists the game as coming soon. So we can just count all of these games as obvious bugs on IndieDB. Now that we got the weird accident out of the way, let us move on to the deliberate ones. Kerbal Space Program 2, developed by S.T.A.L.K.E.R Games and published by Private Division. Both pages are dots. Whenever this happens, it is usually a clear sign that a DBolical staff member has created these pages and installed the project onto the sign on their own volition. Usually this would be done by either Intense or Fileline. The game is also priced at around $50, and it claims to be an indie game. As you can already suspect, this is a clear red flag. Both the Steam and GMG pages also confirm this.
Looks like we got a joker here. What's your name, soldier?
DBolical has facilitated an imposter slop AAA game into the IoTY, even disguising it as an indie on the page. Which is really, utterly sad. Moving on. Next is Dave the Diver, created by Mint Rocket. This game has also been ported to IndieDB by DBolical. This one is somewhat of a trickster. Their price is approximately $20, with their special edition costing $26.08. So this can safely count as a AA game, correct? Well, there is a shady caveat behind this game's developer Mint Rocket. Mint Rocket is completely owned by Nixon, the same Japanese megacorporation behind MapleStory and several other games from their MMO game service. This company is not an indie nor AA studio, it is a AAA business subsidiary of Nixon. Meaning Dave the Diver is a AAA game, masquerading as an indie game. Courtesy of DBolical on this site, but to be fair, both Mint Rocket themselves and the Game Awards were also trying to endorse this dishonest impersonation as well. Next is a far worse offender, S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2, Heart of Chernobyl, by GSC Game World. It is extremely funny and unusual how an official appointed AAA game restricted to ModDB view only, like many legacy AAA games that exist exclusively as basis for mods, somehow managed to worm its way into the IoTY Awards. As if DBolical themselves had suddenly opted to enable the voting feature on all AAA titles by now, instead of just single A and AA games as was the standard tradition. Many of us were not very happy about this blatant, officially appointed double standard either. Now, although GameWorld's team does exist on DBolical, which could initially imply that this blatant cheating could have been a joint operation, it seems their latest game was not ported voluntarily. That was of course very likely the handiwork of DBolical. Every single article on the page has been created by DBolical staff. Same applies to the media content, screenshots, videos, etc., all done by DBolical and some community members on ModDB. So I cannot entirely blame GSC for this fiasco. The developers probably don't even have any idea what is happening to their project on the DBolical site network, especially since this probably happened during their time migrating away from the Russo-Ukrainian war. If there is anything at all that I can blame them for, it is probably for not voicing their disdain against Intense and his boys for using their game as a vehicle to impersonate indie games and cheat in accolades. Other than that, as far as I am concerned, this scummy move is purely DBolical's doing. Next on the list, Killing Floor 3, by the washed up, has been Legends at Tripwire Interactive. The game itself seems to be double priced at the least, a $40 approximate, and triple priced at worst, a $60 approximate. Head over to the store pages and you will see where the higher prices originated, just some extra DLC shit. Fine. Fair enough. Except, let's take a look at the company history of Tripwire Interactive. By this point, many should already know that they are no longer an indie or even AA studio. Those times have long passed. They are a AAA corporation. Worse, they have also been acquired by Saber Interactive in 2022, which in turn was already acquired by Embracer Group in 2020, with Embracer still retaining control of Tripwire after selling Saber to Beacon Interactive in 2024. So as of now, Tripwire is quite literally a AAA subsidiary business. Yet both they and DBolical want to pretend Killing Floor is still an indie or AA franchise. Embarrassing. Let's move on. Sins of Solar Empire 2, developed by Ironclad Games and published by S.T.A.L.K.E.R. While the developer page is a dot created by DBolical, the publisher page is not. It has inactive members, whom have not been online for years. So I can safely rule out that this is a malaction by the official teams. The game cost around $50 at base price, with the premium edition at around $100. This game did at least properly disclose itself as a AAA title. So why in Void's fuck did DBolical decide to endorse this game as a competitor to win the Indie of the Year awards? Another tarnish on the credibility of this website. Next up, squad by once again, the magical and mischievous boys and girls at Offworld Industries. On the page, this game seems to be standing at around a whopping $70 on storefronts. Which if you click on the store links, you will find that it actually cost around $50 base price, with special editions rising higher up to the $70 price approximation. Which is still of course, a AAA game. Why the fuck is this game calling itself an indie? It has even won 4 Indie of the Year awards throughout the 2010s. It won Best Upcoming Game in the 2015 IoTWire Awards Player's Choice. It reached the top 10 in the 2015 IoTWire Awards Player's Choice, placing as a runner-up. As well as received an honorable mention in both the 2017 and 2018 IoTWire Awards Player's Choice. So it seems this blatant imposter has even pervaded its way through the awards in the 2010s. Maybe the nepotism was not just so exclusively blatant in the 2020s, isn't it?
You sure about that?
Yes, I know, shut the fuck up. Here is the critical trickster. The truth is, by default, Squad did once qualify as a legitimate AA game. It originally was being sold for approximately $35 on Steam during early access. Yet for some odd reason, Probably when the game left early access and released in its final phase, they decided to permanently increase the price to nearly $50. This, perhaps rare, daring, and dirty movie already frustrated their fanbase, forcing them to wait for large discounts before buying the game. Regardless, I cannot blame DBolical for this injustice that appears to be the case on IndieDB. They were ironically very legit on the site, operating properly as a AA title, and won all of these accolades before all of these dirty changes ever happened, which only occurred in 2020. However, this did confirm that off-world industries are in fact dirty game developers. To suddenly hike prices on their games when the coast is finally clear, along with that live service scam that is Starship Troopers, Extermination, a game that plays so great, under the caveat of being a tremendously fraudulent commercial, online exclusive, DRM strict trap. With this next game, matters are far less scummy. TimeSplitters Rewind, developed by S.T.A.L.K.E.R Interactive. This game is by all accounts a legitimate indie game. It matters not whether it's fan-made, but at least it still follows most of the rules as an indie game accordingly, unlike some other certain titles. The sole rule it has failed to follow, however, is project release scheduling. This game has released on November 23, 2025. Yet, the game still lists itself as upcoming or to be decided. It has won 2 awards while still misidentifying itself in this state. While the first one, the Community Award in the Editor's Choice, is honestly acceptable, the second one, winning 3rd place in the Player's Choice upcoming game, is not. Rewind literally cheated in a category meant for legitimately released indie and AA games, and it is honestly shameful that the lead dev at S.T.A.L.K.E.R Interactive was negligent to update their game accordingly on time, and avoid this mistake. They were either just too lazy to do their due diligence, or they were deliberately seeking to take the awards for granted and abuse it. While this does not tarnish my fandom for their fan game, it does sour my respect for the dev team. Next is this unusual game, Cronos, The New Dawn, created by Blooper Team. This game is obviously a AAA title, base price at around $60, and it is of course, falsely claiming to be an indie game. And no, I did not censor the swearing on my comment, Intense did that. Here is my original uncensored response. Initially I thought the creator was behind this blatant impersonation of an indie game, but that was before I discovered how long the developer was ever active on the site. I'd even reckoned that the 3 members are essentially just one of the same using alternative accounts, with the least oldest in activity of 7 years, and the most over 12 years. Despite the record of older AA and indie titles on their business record, they probably were unaware that DBolical ever added their latest AAA title onto the site, and probably against their consent. DBolical is solely at fault for this. The details from the content uploaded to the page is a major part of the evidence. It has all been uploaded by Fireline, one of the DBolical staff. Fortunately, it never won the top 10 IoTY awards, but it has managed to make it to top 100 and deny actual indie and AA games a spot on the list. Shameful. Finally, we have Clair Obscura, Expedition 33, developed by S.T.A.L.K.E.R Interactive, and published by Kerbal Interactive. Both the dev and pub pages are dots, meaning this game is of course another staff insert. Pricing at almost $50 at base value, with deluxe edition at nearly $60. It was of course yet another major cheater AAA game disrespecting indie games, and would mark the final straw for my tolerance in supporting or using IndieDB anymore. Before I wrap this video, there is an important suggestion I want to make for DBolical and IndieDB. As I stated in my conversation with fellow IndieDB user Mike_Bear, I think DBolical would honestly be better off just scanning the entire IndieDB site system and rebranding it as GameDB instead. At least by then, all of these nepotistic tricks and double standards they are doing and endorsing would suddenly be more tolerable. Especially since Intense himself truly thinks AAA games don't get enough attention in accolades. It would be an easy win-win solution. But I guess this matters not, for I have lost any faith for this site and DBolical themselves. I have been talking with the moderators and admin interns for years about this ever-growing problem of quality control, where some AAA games are being regarded as indie games with total impunity, as well as their own nepotistic bias in blatantly and deliberately favoring this matter, while also blatantly shilling AAA titles into the accolades so shamelessly. In the 2025 awards and during the top 100 phase, I have even highlighted these problems in advance before any major damage could happen. No matter how much I tried to reason with them, it still was all for naught. Just like I said in my ModDB video, Scott Intense Resmanis, one of the two founders of DBolical, both of whom were once the two most pragmatic and responsible minds in DBolical's entire history, and the last remaining founder left still running DBolical, would no longer listen to reason. In the matter of managing standalone games themselves, he is directly one of the very people responsible for perpetuating this blatant indie impostorship problem with AAA titles, the other being Fireline. This is not even just about the awards. These games I covered from those awards are just highlighted examples of DBolical themselves granting them leeway to participate in the accolades. It's the easiest way to highlight the quality control problem instead of scavenging the site to find them manually. The same especially apply with the ModDB side, but unlike over there where there are still plenty of indie imposters on the site that one can just manually search and discover on their own probably with moderate ease, it's not that simple to highlight this form of impostorship on IndieDB. It is not like most of these game devs are intentionally lying about the classification of their games, many are trying to do the right thing and follow the rules. This matter is almost exclusively just DBolical playing dirty and violating the rules of their own site. Even in spite of their special conditions in their policy, these games still don't qualify in such special condition, not even Clair Obscura, Expedition 33. Overall, I am already convinced that no matter how much people like myself rant and complain about it, nothing will ever truly change or improve on an old and dying website whence its staff are often too slothful to care. Although I have not discovered as many users complaining about this matter on IndieDB, one does not even need to find such evidence. If you are familiar with how IndieDB operated since its foundation in 2010, you can already know how very little has ever improved from its original iteration. So you may be wondering, why not I just start my own storefront or game hosting service instead? I already explained why in the ModDB variants video, so just watch that video listed as a source in the description of this video if you want to know why. For now, all I can contend with as an alternative is to take my chances with each and their game hosting feature. Which fortunately for me, I fucking love that route. Even during the time IndieDB was still respectable, I have highly respected each for their powerful support for indie game repository. Gone are the dreadful days of finding a reliable way to upload your multi-gigabyte heavy game. It is honestly a very reliable alternative for indie games and A2 games. It used to be an extremely reliable site, until they were subjugated by collective shout and forced to make concessions, which inadvertently upset a lot of game devs, so I can no longer call this place some kind of holy sanctuary, but it is still much more than manageable for now. Best of all, the Itch Corporation does not even cry about or actively stifle AIA or AIG games. The worst they ever did so far is create a special tag for any projects that use GI tools or feature AIG content. Regardless, I would still much rather just host a service of my own as a failsafe. Times change surprisingly easily. There is no telling whether Itch will remain a noble site forever, let alone for very long. Unlike Evil Valve and their Steam platform, or Michael Kosinski's GOG platform, whom can easily resolve or even mitigate the total destruction of their businesses if the female supremacists from Collective Shout totally succeed in their hateful, anti-gamer eradication campaign, Itch will not be as lucky. If they lose all of their health points, it's absolutely game over for them, they will crash and burn. Then, I will have no reliable platform to host any of my games. And I mean, reliable. Not an overglorified DRM-laden fest whence its store provider is, or if lucky, I guess now was even trying to stifle game devs' ability to properly market our work, of which far too many foolish game devs keep exclusively selling their games there. I used to care for IndieDB. I wanted to care and help this site improve and grow. I even offered my services to DBolical, employing me to help maintain the ethics and integrity of the website, and hopefully also modernize it to match with the later millennial times, and in a way that does not compromise their social and political integrity, at the expense of our right to creativity, much less to appease a bunch of toxic prejudicial wenches from an organization that ironically disrespects members of the alphabets. But in the end, I was only wasting my time. I wasted my time caring for a site, staff, and community who do not want to be ethical, sane, or respectful to creative barriers and fundamentals. None of them even want to care. They just want to be disingenuous. So on January 2nd, 2026, I stopped caring. I've digitally packed my things and left IndieDB, and this time, I am not coming back ever again. It matters not if DBolical suddenly and finally start changing for the better later. I still don't trust that they will retain their principles so vigilantly. While I can at least trust their game dev community, for the most part, I cannot trust DBolical staff to ever be faithful in ethics anymore. DBolical has zero ethics, logic, and rationality in gaming. Ethics in gaming is lost. It's honestly been lost since the 2010s, and now even the fundamentals between what class of video game are apparently going away to. IndieDB is lost. I will settle for each instead. That is where you will find me if you want to discuss games or mods with me. This is where you will find the latest version of my mods and games. That is where I will stay, probably forever. That is all for this video. Much less like modding, short of a few outliers, like the games from the Unreal franchise. Once I stopped loving it and just want to avoid it as much as possible, I do not hate game development. Although I do not trust the gaming world or industry at large. In fact, I hate them for the most part. Hence why I will rarely ever buy any new games in this decade. As long as my itch account and ability to create and host games survives, I will always continue to make indie games, at least for myself to enjoy, and at most for those of you who care. In fact, you can even play the game I am playing in this background if you want. It's called S.T.A.L.K.E.R 3D, part of the Tour of Generations Digital Graphics Museum project, and it is 100% free. Exclusively on itch. A very great retro shooter representative of the 5th generation of gaming, packed with interesting features that few A3 or A2 games will even feature, or for the price of nothing but pure love and joy. Anyway, state your feedback in the comments. If you know of any other game hosting sites that can work properly, let me know in the comments. I don't usually say this in my videos, but for once, I guess I will make an exception for this video. If you are watching this on Rumble, don't forget to like and subscribe to this video. I don't care if you do it on YouTube either, but I do not and will not prioritize that. I do not respect Google at all, or the broken mess that is trash too, so while likes are welcome due to algorithm tactics, I don't see any value in subscriptions anymore on that shitty website, hence why I don't usually ever ask for subscriptions on that service. I am not even sure anymore if likes or dislikes will even matter with the algorithm anymore. Everything is just going crazy and haywire now. Alphabet, Google, and YouTube have all completely lost their sanity at this point. I will honor your support tremendously if you do this on Rumble instead. It is not hard to make a new account over there. Plus they already have nearly all the features YouTube has, including monetization, which mind you, I am not even monetized and honestly don't care too much to change that on Rumble. All my videos are free. I will not be uploading commentary videos on YouTube forever. I am genuinely sick and tired of using this site, even if as a secondary or tertiary source of media for simple expression. I want an audience that will support me over at Rumble and make a healthy community out of my subset space on the site instead of just snaring away out of fear of the political nature of the site. You don't have to contend with the political trash. I avoid it religiously. All I bother to do on the site is watch game dev tutorials, gameplay videos, and listen to game music on radio live streams. That is all I care to do on Rumble. So if you can do that and brave through the noise storm like I and many others are doing, then join me. Make yourself a new account if you have not already, like this video, and subscribe to my Rumble channel. I will see you all later. Always, ever creative.